The message for today is entitled, What is Christianity? How many of you have traditionally called yourself Christians? Let me see your hand. I put up both of mine on that one. If I could put my feet up, I would put those up too. Many of us have traditionally referred to ourselves by that designation of Christian. And most of us have called ourselves that because we were raised that way. Our parents were Christians, our grandparents were Christians. Whether it was Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, whatever, we called ourselves Christians. And I'm not sure, brothers and sisters, that everybody is clear on what is Christianity. As a boy, just like Brother Penny there, he reminded me so much of myself. I was very apt, and I took notice of everything. My eyes didn't miss nothing. Just like your child's eyes don't miss nothing. Look at the person next to you and say, when you think they're not looking, they're looking. Don't ever forget that. As a boy, I was the personification of the question why. I asked why to almost everything. I remember my parents telling me, boy, don't ask so many questions. And you may have said that to your children now and again. I remember my parents saying to me, you don't need to know the answer to that. I remember that. Even in school, I remember my teachers saying to me, your questions aren't important. What you really need to do is develop a skill working with your hands. That's what I remember teachers saying to me. Yes, as a child, I knew there was somebody out there who didn't want me to think. And guess what, y'all? There are people that don't want you to think. There are people that don't want you to think. In all, and I mean all, of my Sunday school literature, I noticed that everyone who was used of God in the literature was white. And all of the bad people, they weren't black, but they had a dingy appearance. They weren't as clean looking as everybody else. They were tinted or whatever, and I just kind of assumed it was like, because they had been working or something. But you take people like Goliath. Goliath was always portrayed as an unclean person. He just had to, he hadn't shaved and, real bearded kind of thing, kind of rusty looking face. You take people like Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible, these people were portrayed as dirty or not as clean or as lily white as others in my literature. What's really deep is I remember my grandmother, God bless her heart, sweetest woman. In fact, she was Jesus personified to me growing up, because I had never really seen Jesus, and the only image or person I had to kind of come close to who I thought God was like was my grandmother. And that's how children see us. Y'all need to remember, the closest thing that a child has to God is you. Remember that. My grandmother had a huge picture of the Last Supper in the dining room. See, back in those days we had dining rooms. Don't have dining rooms now. You got a little kitchenette area. And that's by design, people. See, the most important time of the day is for the family to sit down and eat together. If you notice, houses that they're building now don't have dining rooms. It's deep. this huge picture of the Last Supper. I'll never forget it because I used to study this picture even as a boy, and I noticed that there was this big long table. How many of y'all know what I'm talking about? How many of y'all see? So, oh, a lot of hands are up. Maybe y'all probably got them in your house too, right? You know, this big long table with 12 white men behind it. And something about that picture was strange to me even as a child, but I didn't know what it was. Now I know what it was. And when I'm going to share this with you, you go look at your picture and see if you see what I'm talking about. The first thing wrong with that picture is they're sitting at a table. That's right. They didn't sit at tables back in that day. They sat on the floor. That's the first thing wrong with that picture. The second thing strange about that picture is all 12 men are sectioned off in groups of threes. Yeah. Think about it. And see, I want y'all to study. See, I used to notice this years ago. Why are they all in groups of threes? 3, 6, 9, 12. And then the other thing was, underneath the tablecloth comes down to a certain level, but underneath the table, there are 4 legs. One leg under each group of men. Now tell me, was I doing some analyzing or what? And of course, the sun was in the middle. Now I know what it is. The 3 men are the 3 months of each season. The 4 groups of threes representing 3 months in the 4 seasons of the year. So again, it's back to that zodiac thing. Summer, winter, spring, and fall. And that's what each leg of the table represents, a season of the year. So, ooh, this is deep. What really did it for me was the love that my grandmother had for a man called Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts was the most popular preacher in my community. I remember my grandmother taking me with her many times to the corner store to get a money order to send to Oral Roberts so that he could send back his gift to her. This one time in particular, she had to get this gift from Oral Roberts. And I, me being, I thought it was like a big toy or something, because, that's the only thing that really fancied me. And when this gift came, it blew my mind. It was an 11 by 17 size picture of Jesus. Of course, he didn't look like me. He didn't look like my grandmother. He didn't look like anybody in my family. But it was the most prized possession in our home. My grandmother hung this picture of Jesus up over the couch. That's what we called it. What do y'all call it? Sofa or something? I was a little boy. Y'all call it couch too? Okay. My grandmother hung this big picture, and it was huge to me. I'm a little boy, and it was like 11 by 17 size picture. Hung it right up in the center of the wall over the couch in the living room. And the real thing that blew my mind is she told me, and I'll never forget these words, she said, Oral Roberts said, no matter where you move in the room, Jesus is looking at you. That's what they used to say. I remember that. And see, as a boy, I didn't understand, how art, if you take a picture looking in the camera, and that's how it's going to look. And it thing scared me because no matter, and I put it to the test. I'd hide over here and look, and he was looking at me, and I'd go over here, hide behind this chair and peep around, and lo and behold, he was looking at me. I was like, oh, this is deep, This white man is watching me. I'm a little boy now. But something just didn't set right with me about these white images, and especially that big picture. But I had no other information to stand on. Why was it that this man, Oral Roberts, had more respect from my grandmother than all of the blacks in my family and community combined? He had no idea who we were. We had never met him. And in fact, we didn't see him. She listened to him on the radio. But I knew that my grandmother would send a money order to this man every time she got her check. What was this power over my grandmother and so many others just like her? What was this power? What was this power that made my grandmother stand in front of this 11 by 17 picture of this white Jesus and cry as she talked to it? And then when she would walk away from it, she would sing this song, I must tell Jesus all of my troubles. I cannot bear these burdens alone. What was this power? It's deep, y'all. I remember, see, this thing was so real to my grandmother. And I watched this. This thing was so real to my grandmother. I said, man, I need to try this. So I went and stood in front of it, looked up at it. And I talked to it, and when I talked to it, something said to me, you fool. I mean, even as a little kid, I knew this picture wasn't going to talk back to me. You understand what I'm saying? And when I would talk to it, what really blew my mind is when I talked to the thing, guess what happened, y'all? My brain went to work, and instead of really looking for an answer back, I'm saying, wait a minute, why is this picture in color? All of the pictures in my house were black and white. I mean, back at that time, it was black and white pictures, y'all. Wait, they hadn't come out with color pictures yet. Yeah. So why was this picture in color? Again, the programming. Many years later, I was able to understand that the image that we were given to worship as our redeeming Savior, Messiah, was the image of the conquering European. Right. And our slave masters. In the definition of its true purpose, the subject again today is what is Christianity? So in the definition of its true purpose, and this is the Ray Hagins definition. This is not out of Webster's dictionary. All right, it's not out of any resource. This is my own personal definition. Christianity may be defined as a Euro-Gentile psycho-philosophical vehicle of spiritual and intellectual enslavement, which has as its end three things. Let me say that part again. Christianity may be defined as a Euro-Gentile psycho-philosophical vehicle of spiritual and intellectual enslavement, which has as its end three things. The first thing it has as its end is the cultural, everybody say cultural, and racial superiority of the people who created it. Did y'all hear that? Yes. The first goal is the cultural and racial superiority of the people who created it. The second thing, and say this with me, is the paralysis of analysis. Come on, say it like you mean it. The paralysis of analysis. You know what that means, brothers and sisters? Paralysis of analysis means that you don't think. You don't exercise your critical thinking faculties. People say stuff to you and you just let it go in one ear and fall inside your head wherever it may, and don't even challenge it, question it, nothing. So the second goal of this program is a paralysis of analysis by those who believe in it. And the third thing is, and everybody say this, the perpetual empowerment of the agenda intended by it. Now, did y'all get those three things? Listen to me now. Listen to me. Number one, again, the cultural and racial superiority of the people who created it. Number two, the paralysis of analysis by those who believe in it. And number three, the perpetual empowerment of the agenda intended by it. In order for those, and I'm talking to you, my brothers and sisters, and those of you who are watching this, in order for those who have been misled to begin to see correctly, you must have a clear analytical understanding of the origin, of the strategies, of the mechanics, of the purpose and methods of the device that has blinded you in the first place. Yeah. You must understand what it is that's blinding you. I remember reading about, I think it was Harriet Tubman that had the Underground Railroad, wasn't it? Yes. They tell me she freed 300 slaves. Ain't that what they say? According to record, she says, I would have freed more if they had known they were slaves. Isn't that deep? It's bad, brothers and sisters, when you are looking through the lenses or the paradigm of what your oppressor wants you to look through and think that you're seeing the truth. Oh yeah. When it comes to the liberation of the African mind from European concepts, we must examine and re-examine again and again those agencies that has Europeanized our thinking until we are truly disconnected from the tentacles of their grasps. Everybody repeat this with me, please, or after me. When you adopt a God who is not in your own image, when you embrace literature that teaches you to hate yourself and love your enemy, when your oppressor and savior and your God and enslaver are one and the same, you become the principal agent in your own destruction. Did y'all understand that paragraph? Now I noticed a lot of y'all just sat there and looked at me when I was trying to use a technique that we as educators use, and that is called restating what the instructor is saying so it'll help take up residence in your mind. But again, some don't want to wake up. Now let's try that again, all right? I'm looking at you this time, and I want to see who insists on staying asleep. Repeat this. When you adopt a God who is not in your own image, when you embrace literature that teaches you to hate yourself and love your enemy, when your oppressor and savior and your God and enslaver are one and the same, you become the principal agent in your own destruction. And that's what's been happening, people. Today, I'm going to help you see, if you want to see. I got to say that now, because I found out everybody don't really want to see. I'm going to help you see, if you want to see, the deception of the Euro-Gentile powers called Christianity. The creation of Christianity and the incarnated Logos Christ was not an act or event, brothers and sisters. It wasn't something that just happened and took root. It was a process that began in the year 332 BC and went all the way up to the year 553 AD. Y'all know that's almost 800 years
The informative information presented in this video is motivational and is positively aimed at inspiring, educating and entertaining the viewers with the cutting edge of critical reasoning. If you enjoy the contents on the Black Radar YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to show your support.